A journey through time, the dark and mysterious origins of trick-or-treating. Welcome back, mystical seekers. Tonight, we dive into one of the most beloved traditions of Halloween, trick-or-treating. Every year, millions of children across America and beyond dress up in their spookiest costumes, knocking on doors in exchange for candy. But where did this eerie custom come from? Behind the laughter and sugar rush lies a history steeped in ancient traditions, fear of spirits, and religious rites. So, grab your favorite Halloween snack, dim the lights, and join me as we unravel the mysterious origins of trick-or-treating. This journey will take us across centuries, through ancient Celtic rituals, medieval Europe, and modern America. What begins as a simple exchange of sweets has roots far darker and more mystical than you might ever imagine. Chapter 1. Samhain, the birth of darkness. Our story begins over 2,000 years ago, deep in the heart of what we now know as Ireland, Scotland, and parts of northern France, where the Celts celebrated their festival of Samhain, pronounced Samhain. This festival marked the end of the harvest and the beginning of the dark, cold winter. The Celts believed that on the night of October 31st, the veil between the world of the living and the world of the dead became so thin that the spirits of the dead could cross over. Samhain wasn't a time of joy. Winter was coming, and with it, death loomed. Many feared the return of their deceased loved ones, not in the form of loving ancestors, but in the form of restless spirits. These spirits, known-as-aishi, were thought to be malevolent and capable of wreaking havoc on the world of the living. To appease these wandering souls, the Celts would offer food and drink. People would leave portions of their harvest, bread, and other goods outside their homes, hoping to ward off the spirits. But it didn't stop there. Fearing they might be recognized by these vengeful spirits, the Celts began to disguise themselves in grotesque costumes, made from animal skins and heads. This was not for fun, but to blend in with the spirits and avoid being noticed or harmed. Imagine the flickering firelight, the smoky air filled with the smell of offerings burning for the dead, and the eerie sounds of the wind howling through the ancient forests. Children wouldn't dare venture too far from home, but if they did, they would have donned these fearsome costumes, hoping the spirits would mistake them for one of their own. This is the birth of our modern Halloween costumes, and the first inkling of the practice that would one day evolve into trick-or-treating. Chapter 2. The Roman influence, Pomona and Feralia. Fast forward a few hundred years to the time when the Roman Empire spread its mighty reach into Celtic lands. Like so many other pagan customs, Samhain began to blend with Roman traditions. One of these Roman festivals was Feralia, which took place in late October. Feralia was a day set aside to honor the dead, a tradition not so different from Samhain's own communion with the spirits. During this time, the Romans would offer sacrifices to their deceased ancestors, laying out food and gifts at grave sites in an effort to appease the restless dead. The idea was that these offerings would ensure peace for the spirits and protection for the living. The other Roman celebration that merged with Samhain was Pomona, named after the goddess of fruit and orchards. Pomona was celebrated with feasts that featured apples and nuts, food symbolic of the harvest. In fact, the practice of bobbing for apples, a common Halloween game, is thought to stem from these Roman celebrations of Pomona. The fusion of Celtic and Roman traditions was the beginning of what would eventually become Halloween. But there's still a long, twisted road ahead. Chapter 3. The Dark Ages and the Spread of Christianity, Soul Cakes and Beggars. As Christianity spread across Europe, the Church sought to replace pagan traditions with their own holy days. In the 7th century, Pope Boniface IV declared November 1st as All Saints' Day, or All Hallows' Day, to honor saints and martyrs. The evening before, October 31st, became known as All Hallows' Eve, the name that would eventually evolve into Halloween. However, many pagan traditions didn't disappear. They simply morphed. In the Middle Ages, another tradition arose called souling, which brought us even closer to modern-day trick-or-treating. On All Souls' Day, November 2nd, It was common for poor people and children to go door to door offering prayers for the dead in exchange for food. They would receive what were called soul cakes, small, round cakes made with spices and currants. Each cake represented a soul that had been prayed for, helping it ascend from purgatory to heaven. The more cakes a person collected, the more souls they could theoretically save. It wasn't candy or fun. It was a serious act of devotion. And yet, the idea of going door to door, asking for something, had taken root. Chapter 4, Guising, the trick and trick or treat. By the time the 16th century rolled around, in parts of Scotland and Ireland, a new tradition was born called guising. Guising is likely the direct predecessor to modern trick-or-treating. In this practice, children and sometimes adults would dress in costumes or guises and visit homes. Unlike souling, where prayers were offered, guisers would perform songs, poems, or jokes in exchange for food or money. This added an element of performance and entertainment to the tradition. But why costumes? Remember, in the ancient Celtic world, people wore disguises to avoid recognition by the dead. In guising, this tradition lived on. The fear of spirits may have diminished, but the idea of dressing up in strange, spooky attire remained. What these guisers were given, however, varied greatly. Sometimes it was fruit, nuts, or coins, rewards for their talents. Other times, mischievous children who didn't receive anything would play pranks on those who refused them. Thus, the trick and trick or treat was born. Chapter 5, Halloween crosses the Atlantic. Now, let's fast forward to the 19th century when millions of Irish and Scottish immigrants fled to America, bringing with them their rich Halloween traditions. It wasn't long before America embraced the spooky holiday. At first, Halloween in America was marked by parties and parades. Families would host parties featuring games like bobbing for apples, fortune-telling, and feasts centered around the fall harvest. While trick-or-treating didn't immediately take hold, the seeds had been planted. It wasn't until the 1920s and 1930s that trick-or-treating, as we know it today, began to take shape. But this wasn't yet a nationwide tradition. It was still somewhat scattered and largely dependent on the neighborhood. By the 1930s, pranking had become a major part of Halloween in the United States. However, this often turned into vandalism. Some young people would soap windows, throw rotten vegetables at homes, or tip over outhouses. This was the trick without the treat, a Halloween hijacked by mischief and sometimes outright destruction. Communities soon realized that they needed a way to channel this youthful energy into something less destructive. And so, the idea of offering treats as a way to distract potential pranksters took hold. Chapter 6, the trick-or-treat boom. It wasn't until after World War II that trick-or-treating exploded into the phenomenon it is today. Post-war America saw an economic boom, and with it came suburban neighborhoods filled with children. Candy was also now more readily available and affordable than ever before. The 1950s marked the true golden age of trick-or-treating. Families in neighborhoods all across the country would buy bags of candy to hand out to the costumed children that would flood the streets each Halloween night. The rise of car culture and suburban living made this tradition safer and more communal. Soon, Halloween became one of the most commercialized holidays in America. Candy companies quickly realized the potential of Halloween as a moneymaker. They started marketing Halloween-themed candies, and trick-or-treating became synonymous with receiving store-bought treats. The days of homemade goodies were over, replaced by the colorful, sugar-filled snacks we know today. Chapter 7, the dark side of trick-or-treating. But with the rise of trick-or-treating came new fears and urban legends. As Halloween became a night for fun and candy, darker rumors began to surface. Stories of poisoned candy, hidden razor blades in apples, and malicious tricks played on unsuspecting children. While the vast majority of these stories were urban myths, they spread fear across the country. Parents became more cautious, inspecting their children's candy and sticking to neighborhoods they knew well. These fears have persisted to this day, though very few actual cases of Halloween candy tampering have ever been documented. Despite this, Halloween and trick-or-treating have survived. even in the face of such paranoia. Chapter 8: Halloween Today and Tomorrow. Today, trick-or-treating remains one of the most cherished and iconic aspects of Halloween. Children dress up as their favorite characters: ghosts, witches, superheroes, and monsters, marching through neighborhoods with their candy buckets, shouting trick or treat. But as we look ahead to the future, we can't help but wonder how trick-or-treating will evolve. In an age of digital distractions, virtual reality, and online communities, will children still walk door to door? Or will the tradition move into the digital realm? Perhaps one day, we'll see virtual trick-or-treating, where avatars of children go from one virtual haunted house to another, collecting digital candies and costumes. Or maybe the traditions of the past will remain, with future generations still feeling the thrill of Halloween night, hearing the rustling of leaves beneath their feet, and knocking on doors, hoping for that sweet reward. Conclusion: a tradition rooted in shadows. Trick-or-treating is a tradition as old as time itself, rooted in our ancient fears and desires. From the dark forests of Celtic Europe to the suburban streets of modern America, the act of giving and receiving during Halloween has always been about much more than just sweets. It's about connection, the unknown, and the thin line between life and death. It's a reminder that, on one night a year, we still acknowledge the mysteries of the world, both seen and unseen. And while we may laugh at the costumes and enjoy the candy, deep down, Halloween will always carry with it a touch of dark magic and ancient fear. So, as you prepare for Halloween this year, don't forget the history behind that knock on the door. It's not just candy you're giving away. It's part of a ritual that has transcended centuries, one that ties us to the past and continues to evolve with each new generation. Happy Halloween, mystical seekers. And remember, on this night, the spirits are watching,